Hey.
Al. Hi.
Today we have on Al Trombetta. Yay. Welcome, Al. It's so good to see your face. Thank you for coming on.
Of course.
I've known Al for about 5 years, and from what I know of you, you have always wanted to be an agent.
Show me the money!
So you are in Los Angeles, California, exactly where you need to be, but you're a New York Italian transplant. Came out west and did get hired in agencies earlier on during sort of the sexual predator Harvey Weinstein era, back when maybe, you know, you had some tough clients that you thought were just being difficult, that maybe there was something else going on that we didn't really know about, more than you realized. You were called a faggot by a high-profile actor, unfortunately. Growing up as a gay male, you know, and then walking into a job like that, I'm sure that you were surrounded by white men who looked like you, cis white men, but then, you know, certainly those talents being portrayed on screen did not represent anything in your wheelhouse. So I can imagine it would have been an interesting environment to be in as a gay man. And Dina and I have talked about this, and the rest of the world's been talking about this for that matter, as to what a huge difference it makes to have proper representation. And you know, in every walk of life, in every company, and I know there's been a lot of affirmative action and diversity programs put into place, but in your instance, in entertainment industry, it's so important because what you guys put into place affects what everybody sees on screen, in advertising. Like, that is such an important role that you play there. So getting to Al works at a huge sports and music agency in Los Angeles now, and he was lucky enough to be part of creating a diversity program in this agency, diversity and inclusion. It's called the DI Council, where he is one of the founding members and chair. So I think that's incredible.
That's incredible.
I want to know, you know, a little bit about that crazy background that you went through back in the day, and some of the things that maybe you experienced that compelled you to want to do something better in the world you work in.
Yeah, so thank you, Ashley. That was a perfect introduction. And I don't really need to say anything more, but I will for
Thank
time.
you. Appreciate it.
But I think, you know, just to sort of add on to what you said, I got into this business purely by chance.
Mm-hmm.
A friend of mine had, went on an interview there, but then he gave the HR business card to me. He's like, Al, you're pushy, you're loud, you're obnoxious. You would be perfect at this thing.
The role you were applying for, was it actually for an agent role, or what was it for?
It was to be anything.
Okay, you just entry level, foot in the door into an agency.
Yes.
Got it.
And I'm sitting there outside of his office and I can hear him and I'm like, oh man, what am I doing? What did I get myself into? And then I met with him and then I got the job. And that's sort of how it started.
Right.
And then when you start as an assistant, then is it the next goal is to be a junior agent and then an agent?
Yeah. So how this particular company did it was it's assistant and then coordinator and then agent. No one cares about title other than getting that agent placard.
So once you got a foot in the door there, what sort of things did you see that kind of made you go, wait, this feels like maybe this environment works a little different than what I thought or what it should?
Yeah. So I want to start off too by saying, I'm a kid of privilege. My parents, were upper middle class. Mm-hmm. I grew up on Long Island, and they made me work. Like in New York, at 16, you can work. Mm-hmm. So I was a supermarket checker.
Me too.
Mm-hmm.
At 16.
Cool.
How funny.
And so
I can bag better than you. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I get it. Actually, yesterday we were at the store, and I always bag my own groceries.
I know, I love it. I do a better
You
job.
have to in Italy, by the way. That no one's bagging anything for you.
You do in London,
so
too.
No, but I always feel like Lucy on like the thing where she's trying to put all the candy.
Oh,
'Cause
yeah.
people are
Yes.
behind you and they just keep throwing your stuff. And so,
Yep.
but wait, I want to ask you, before you were gonna become an agent, what was the job you were doing before?
I stayed in the New York metro area. I went to school for journalism because I love to write. And my dream job ever was to be a writer for the New York Times. Basically, I learned that you can't just graduate from college and to a job at the New York Times. You have to start out covering car accidents in like 8,000 hours away from New York City. And as a 21-year-old or whatever, I wanted to move into New York City immediately. So I abandoned the idea of working for the Times. I had no goal. Like once I wasn't writing for the New York Times, I didn't know what I wanted to be. Okay. And I got into this agency and I was like, oh, wow, this is, I see myself here. And, you know, I've always said this, people ask me why entertainment and it's so full of fakery and it's all bogus. But movies, TV, you know, documentaries, they bring us joy. And in any way possible to be a part of that process of bringing people joy, that's ultimately why I am still in this business. For all the crap and for all the abuse, to be a part of something that is so influential globally. You're in Italy, Dina, you know, you're in London, Ashley, and I'm in LA, but we can probably talk about the same movies or the same TV show.
Exactly.
And it's a global bring us together sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I think more than ever, that is needed.
Agreed.
Well, and to be able to be a part of something that affects so many people out in the world has to also be a good feeling.
Yes, absolutely. Looking at it now, I realize that I was part of a tiny, tiny part of, you know, the last gasp of what is coming out now is part of the Me Too movement. And as we mentioned at the top of the show, that's the Harvey Weinstein stuff that has come out. Like that was happening while I was a young agent, a young assistant at this agency. In New York, the entertainment community is small, so we really knew each other. So I had many people in my space that wanted to work at Miramax, that wanted to work for Scott Rudin, who was another one who's abusive, not sexually, but is like verbally abusive, has come out now. I mean, I knew about that for 20 years and no one cared because in entertainment, you know, there's this paying your dues sort of, and part of paying your dues is getting yelled at and screamed at and abused and, you know, get my effing laundry, which I had to too. And I didn't think anything of it because I didn't know better. We didn't know better.
Before this experience there, had you ever been treated in a specific way or witnessed this kind of, we'll call it toxic environment? So like, was this your first? And so maybe, because what I'm trying to establish is also for listeners is that you didn't know that this wasn't normal. Like for me, when I was always getting Me Too, there's never been a job that I haven't had where a boss hadn't tried, right? But I was always just assuming it was me and I wasn't setting good boundaries. And then now when it all came out, I was like, oh, wait, that was happening to all of you too. So this is a first for you. And so you just went with the flow because that's all you knew to do because no one else was speaking up either.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, great. I just wanted to establish that for you.
100%. Going into this environment, I now look at it as a boot camp for a privileged upper middle class white kid. You know, it gives me the work ethic that I have now. You know, I work my butt off. I always have. Because there is always, and this is terrible, this is why we're having this conversation, there's always the fear of someone's going to scream and yell.
But is that the best motivator? I mean, it is a form of motivation, but looking back, I think you would have found a good work ethic regardless because you were so driven to want to do that job.
Yes,
right?
And that's true. And it's sort of the healing of this is realizing how the difference in those two motivators. You know, so now I do understand that, you know, I'm doing what I'm doing because I love it.
Yes.
And the minute someone raises their voice to me, I immediately put an end to it or I'll quit.
Yes.
Good
Like-
for
But
you.
back in that day, we were told to suck it up.
Right.
And it's your
Yes.
job and just suck it up. So I think all three of us could agree that we all sucked it up, even though it was very inappropriate. Right. And so, work ethic or not, it was always don't quit your job unless you have another job lined up. So basically,
Right.
take the abuse and suck it up unless you have something better.
Right.
Yes. Absolutely. And that's total, Dina, that's exactly how it went. And, you know, I was there for 5 years, 5.5 years. Women had it worse in the business, not just at that agency. There were few people of color.
Right.
It's like crazy to me now, looking back, how I was at this place for that long, and maybe there was like 2 people of color in my whole like graduating class. It's funny as a gay man.
But were you out as gay then?
I wanted to know that. Yeah.
Good question. I was out to friends and family. As an assistant, you want to give less about your personal life, the better. And this is another area where women as assistants have it tough, because if they think you have kids and a husband, they're less likely to give you more.
Of course.
So I've always been a blank space to my bosses, because I want them to give me everything. I don't want them to think I'm unencumbered from doing it. That's
So
why.
what did that have to do with being gay? Sorry.
So as being gay, I wasn't out because, or if I was straight, I wouldn't. If I had a girlfriend, say, I would never have told them, because
Okay, got
I
you.
wanted, my career was most important. My doing, you know, I was working 10 to 12 hours a day.
Wow.
Which is funny. So I didn't date anybody for, and this is my 20s.
Right.
Your formidable years, I spent paying my dues in the entertainment business.
So did you just sort of feel to yourself, because I did, like, there's no need for me to have this conversation if I'm not with somebody? It's none of their business
Yeah.
if I'm gay or not.
Correct. And, but it's funny, I could think back to a time, and again, we're looking at this through a lens of 20 years ago.
Right.
So
Totally.
I was in another agent's office, and we were talking about something about a client, and this guy, the other agent who I was friends with, was like, in the middle of this conversation about a client, he's like, wait a minute, are you gay?
Wow. Thanks.
And I was so caught off guard because
Right.
I'm all business. And my boss swoops in and is like, he's bi. And I was like, guys, can we get back to the business at hand?
Right.
But it, you know, so I clearly they knew I was gay, obviously. I didn't do one of those straight passing sorts of things. I was too stressed out with day-to-day work to put on that armor.
Yep.
So I was white, male, cis,
Right.
but I was gay. So it's weird. I got a seat at the table, so to speak, but yet because they knew I was gay, I wasn't.
Part of the boys' club.
Yes, exactly. I was very aware of a class system based upon, you know, what we now call straight, cis, white privilege, right? I was below that as white cis, but like a femme-ish gay guy. And I could scream and yell with the best of them. I took a lot of abuse, and I gave it back.
New York
Wait, can I ask a
Italian.
question though? Yeah, what are you talking about? My parents are from Brooklyn, so in the caste scale, does male, and then do gay male, whether you're gay or not, gay males in general, even if you're gay, get more respect than females in that business back then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And
so did you start noticing that, and was that an issue for you? Because I understand that Being gay has to be hard, especially back then in that environment, how everyone's so judgmental. I feel like you're a very sensitive guy. It's not a great feeling for you to look at other people being treated unfairly just because if they were female. Were you guys aware, meaning gay guys or gay women or whatever, did you guys know that each other were, or was it just not talked about throughout all of each other? Did you all just keep that to yourselves?
It's a mix of both. The assistants went out. We were in the trenches. We went out after hours, and we talked about a lot of it. And I think there was a sort of a wink, wink that I'm a gay guy. You're a woman. It sort of sucks for us.
Okay.
We're in a business that we love. The collective joke was like, if we were smart, we would be anywhere else. As much as he was a yeller and a screamer, that's agents, that's how they are. He never, if anyone else talked shit to me, he immediately hauled their asses in his office and made them apologize to me.
Love that.
So I was very, very lucky because there were agents who literally threw vases, staplers at their assistants.
Oh.
Awful.
Well,
awful.
yeah, my boss threw laptops and broke so many laptops when he got upset.
Oh, come on.
And then we'd have to go buy another laptop for him.
Yeah.
It's his money. It's so stupid. Every time he just fits of anger. It's like, what are you doing? Anyway, sidebar.
Yeah. Well, you get it. We had a lot of the young MTV kids. We had a lot of models, male and female. So everyone was hot and very entitled.
As clients, you mean?
They were young and on MTV and whatever. So with this agency, how it sort of works is once the level of trust is there with your boss, and the clients ended up loving me, I often would have to go out with clients, sort of handhold with them, do dinners and walk them into parties. And they were all heterosexual and young and male, cis, and they knew. So, on the way down, we were going to an event at the South Street Seaport. So my agent, me, and the client were in the car, and he said, you're a faggot, right?
What?
He said, you're a faggot, right?
No, that's
and
not.
my boss was like, dude, what the fuck?
Right. Like, what is wrong
and
with you? I'm here to help you.
Yeah. And I was like stunned.
So demeaning
and
in front of everybody that, you're wanting to respect you. And
right.
I'm sorry.
So my boss was like, ever effing, there was a lot of F-bombs. And it was, and I'm like, and again, as the assistant, you don't want any attention.
Yes.
So, the whole thing was sort of this thing. But there was
But did that client apologize in that moment?
Yes.
Okay, thank God. But thank God for your boss.
His ass was about to be tossed
yes.
out of the car. But it took a while for that client to sort of warm up to me, which is crazy.
Crazy.
I'm the assistant to his agent.
And he's the one that offended you, not the other way around.
Right.
Like, what the,
entitled. And, but it's, it's how it is, or how it was. And this is an actor that I had watched on TV. I was a huge fan of the show that he was in. We had another client who would call me up and, I'd answer so-and-so's office and he's like, hey, hot stuff. How am I looking? He's like, you must think I'm hot, right? This is a client.
So rude. Yeah.
Because
since you're gay, every man on the planet is hot, right?
Right.
Just can't keep your eyes off him.
And so finally one day, and I was like, dude, it's not in my contract to get my hair bleached blonde. He had like the frosted tips. Here's this straight guy he was hot, calling me, like sassing me out. Meanwhile, he has the frosted tips, the pretty face. I'm like, actually,
yeah. Aren't those always the ones, though?
First sight, yes.
Yes.
At first sight, people will probably think you're gay before they will me.
Totally.
And it shut him up.
Well, there you go.
But it's an example of the armor that we need or feel that we need to have in our day-to-day I saw women had it worse, like how they were spoken to and in the nightlife. You know, a lot of entertainment, as you know, is sort of the whining and dining.
Absolutely.
And
Take
then
'em out
mix
to
And
alcohol
drinks.
into that, Mitch,
Right.
and that mix with egos and with narcissism and with all of that. And so when did you start noticing that you were part of a minority, meaning like with women and all of that? When did you feel like you wanted your voice to be heard, or did you finally just get to the point where like enough is enough? Like it's because if clearly you love the business enough to stay in it, and so it's very profound that you are helping to make changes in it.
yes, by the end of my tenure at this place, I realized I was like, it's not worth it. It's I love the business and I made my friends there, and these are friends I still have now.
Right. You were in the trenches together.
Yes, absolutely. And I just realized I'm sick of working 12-hour days for 5 years straight because of other people's bullshit. I can impact the joy in the business by doing it somewhere else. I think you just realize that this isn't for me because I've done it. I've been there, got the t-shirt. The abuse wasn't ending. There were female agents and they were the worst because think about all of the defenses they've had to put up to rise.
Yeah.
As young as I was, I'd been there long enough to see all of that. Shit ain't changing. So I left. Throughout my career, as I've grown, I've realized those experiences have really sharpened the lens of which I view my work. So cut to the now, I'm at a major sports media music agency. They announced that we want to form a diversity council and we want it to start from the ground up. We want it to come from the employees.
Which is very cool.
Super cool. We became so successful that the clients started coming to us for guidance. Even now, they sort of do it from the top down, like they hire an SVP diversity. And it's some person in a suit.
Which seems crazy because why do you want to hire from the top when the problem is at the top, right? Like it makes so much sense the way you guys are doing it because you're asking the people that are experiencing the problem to form a solution and give it back. And can I just sort of clarify really quickly too, a DI council, from what I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, does things like help oversee affirmative action with hiring, create inclusive social events for your employees so that everybody gets to mix and mingle together. You educate, you put on education programs and stuff like that. You do outreach, oversight of press releases and that sort of thing to make sure that the verbiage that's going out for the agency, doesn't sound, offensive.
Yes.
Okay.
So there was 9 of us at the time, and I had to write an application. In my essay, I said, as a white man of privilege, I get a seat at the table. But as a gay man, I'm, they leave off a few of the place settings. So I really want to do this because I always do get at the table and I could speak for those that don't.
You're in an interesting position of being right there in between the two worlds, kind of.
Absolutely. So they approved my application and then I became chair. And we sort of, we had to make it up as we went along. One of our first things was we created this glossary of inclusive language. So we talked about pronouns. We talked about gender identity. COVID has made everything sort of a blur.
Right.
3.5 years ago.
Okay, so 2019, 2018?
Yes.
Okay.
And was there any pushback from, let's say, the white people or other people in the agency about this? So that's great, even to begin with. Like, that's amazing because everyone's on the same page.
Yes.
Great.
I have to say, the place where I'm at, I love, 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 love.
It seems like you guys were one of the early purveyors of creating something like this because I was going to say around about 2020, it started to be the sort of thing where agencies didn't have a choice anymore. Like, it was out there in the
Right.
world. Me Too was happening, and it was, clients were pulling their work, right? So when it's like, if you didn't put something into place, they knew their brands were going to suffer being associated with you. So you guys sound like, that was ahead of the curve, which is amazing.
Yeah, we were. I don't even know if we knew it, but we made the whole agency do anti-bias training. We did the glossary of inclusive language. We held town halls after George Floyd. We held several town halls to just get people to talk about it.
Yeah.
Like
That's great.
It was
Nice.
crazy, and management was like, do whatever. This is during COVID. So we were all on these Zooms like we are now, and it was like 200 and some odd people on a Zoom call talking about our feelings.
Oh,
Like,
Wow.
so cool.
That's super cool.
Very cool.
super, super cool. January is something. February is Black History Month. June is Pride. So we would do programming for each month. As we were doing this, the clients wanted to be involved. For Pride last year, I had one of our trans music artists do an unplugged session. So we had some questions, and then they would do an a cappella song.
Yeah, which is so cool, because just to put it in perspective too, like, not only are you at an agency, an entertainment agency, which in and of itself is like everything that you've already described, but the fact that you're at a sports and music, like, I can only imagine the testosterone that was like running through the veins of that company. So to have that much support is pretty incredible, Al, and you must be doing a great job, for them to just give you the reins and say, go for it, and set all this stuff up. And the clients obviously have responded really well to it.
Yeah. Every year I've done an out in sports sort of a thing. And we had Brittney Griner. And so I want to just sort of speak it out here that we want her home.
Yes.
She's so shy. Like, her wife was like so cool, and she was like the more outgoing one. And she sort of joined the panel too. I know they're working on it at all levels of government to bring her home, but just to put that out there, it's awful that she's being used as a pawn.
Yep.
But to your point, Ashley, about sports, I had Jason Collins, who was the first out basketball player.
Okay.
I'm terrible with sports. This is the whole irony. I don't know anything.
Wait, are you a sports agent?
No.
Oh, okay. So are you a music agent? So what do you do in the company now?
Do the council. I also do our internal communications to a degree. I'm creating this intranet vehicle that we're going to be rolling out later this year, as well as supporting our finance, legal, and side of the business.
But can I ask a silly question? For you guys to organize this, had something been happening in the agency or something that made you have to sort of, address the situation and then come up with a sort of game plan?
Good question, and I asked that myself. And so we were just simply ahead of the curve.
Even better. That's incredible.
Because I was like, did something happen that I don't know about that I should be scared of if there's like shit going on here? And they said no. They said, we see what's happening in the world. And about sports, it was important to me. Pride, for example, is I'm really good friends with the editor-in-chief and one of the founders of Outsports, which is that gay in sports blog. And through them, I had out gay hockey players at the college level. Wow. I have an out gay coach who I'm still friends with. So
it's got to be tough
to have all these people speak to my company in a town hall like this. Like, it was crazy. And the feedback I was getting, they were like, wow, because no one had ever heard these stories before. We had really good Black Business Month programming. So we'd have these business owners of like crazy ideas that no one ever heard of. And it's about shining a light in the dark. As cliche as that sounds, it's if we don't tell these people's stories, we won't ever know. So when it comes to our program, the question we always ask each other is, who can we get that would be sort of profound for our constituency, which is our employees, whose story they've never heard before.
Because you're inspiring the younger ones coming up behind you too, right? And you want this to be like business as usual as they carry on, and hopefully really making
Yeah,
a
you wouldn't have to
change.
have a
Right.
section like this because everyone would get treated normal.
Yes.
Right.
But can I just go off a little bit just intuitively for you? Just, I want to, in my beautiful mind, I want to ask a few questions.
Sure.
I feel like sometimes you are minimizing because you grew up privileged. It didn't mean that you did not have challenges along the way being gay. So I can respect and appreciate that you do recognize that maybe you may have had it easier than most, but it still doesn't take away from your gay experience in a world who wasn't as so accepting of it, right? And so with that, I feel like who better to speak up for other people, because I feel like you're giving a voice to the voiceless because you feel like maybe you did have an upper hand in this. But has it ever occurred to you maybe about, have you guys ever thought about having someone or, write something about how this got started and like the momentum that it's getting? And then of course we finish as, it hits the top of it of how much you've done for so many people with this.
Good question. I have thought about it, as a joke. I'll say, it's going to be in the book.
Oh, it is going to be in a show. I'm not even saying a book. It's a big thing that you're doing.
It's funny because I've never watched a single scene of Entourage.
What?
Do you remember that show?
Yes.
Oh my God.
Because I've seen clips
crazy.
and it's very triggering.
I bet. Yeah.
And to Mark Wahlberg's credit, I mean, he did such a good job that he made it so real that I can't watch it.
Yeah.
Sex in the City, the original, I've never seen because I
wow.
lived it.
You were Carrie Bradshaw in your window on your Mac.
In a way.
No, it's more of a Samantha.
But to be, I mean, I've had female friends, agents would hit on them. They'd want to take her out. And I went with her because she did not want to be alone with him. Realized by saying who I worked for, I had a lot of people throw themselves at me. One weekend I did a test. I was like, Friday night, I'm going to say I work for where I work. Saturday night, I'm going to say I work for like a boring.
So
and I got no offers to hook up when I worked for the boring company. But when I said where I worked, really, like people would talk to me. So I realized also, like, how we lead these different versions of our lives.
Yes.
They just want me because of
Ulterior motives.
yes, the access.
Well, what did you want them to want you for? Just kidding.
Well,
just
true.
kidding.
Because of the social circles that I had, I knew a lot of actors, unemployed ones too.
Sure.
And when they found out where I worked, it was like all the cool, smart kids ended up at The Daily Show with Jon Stewart. Apparently that was like a great working environment, whereas the rest of us sort of wanted to work at Miramax.
Oh my God.
And I'm very proud of myself in a lot of ways. I'm really tough and I don't take shit. And a lot of it comes from, I'm a New York Italian guy. A lot of it comes from the strength of my friends group.
So did your friends know growing up in high school? Were you out?
Well, that's funny because we all came out in college.
Okay.
Like my high school, like I'm still one of those weirdos. I'm still friends with a lot of my high school friends.
Yeah, me too.
So we all were straight in high school. And then once we got to college, and then we all moved into New York City together. So
That's fun.
we were out in the queer nightlife.
You're such a sweetheart. Like you keep saying you're tough, and I know you are, but you're also one of the sweetest people that I know. You're so kind and you're so respectful.
I try.
You do a great job of it.
Ernie
And
might have a different view, but
well, speaking of being outed at work, I mean, you know who outed me at work, right? Your boyfriend.
yes, yes.
Whatever.
So
Anyway.
anyways, you seem to have had a pretty positive, not a lot of hard sort of people against you growing up. And yes, my dad is Italian from Brooklyn, and my mom is from the Bronx, so I get the New York Bulls, right, and the confidence. But where I would love for you to really focus in on is that, is it because you care so much about the people you work with, or you see that there does need to be change, or was there a final straw, or had you just been so sick of seeing it for so long that and how are you making the change now to where it is going to impact, to where hopefully other people in other agencies will now take a lead from you guys and maybe start implementing all of that? Because is it well known that you guys now have a diversity inclusion sort of a thing, and are other agents in on that? Did somebody sue a company? Did it come down to something to where it was like, oh shit, like we have to add more inclusion or diversity or whatever it may be? You understand where I'm coming from with that?
Yes.
Because
So for my own personal situation, I think I've always been, I remember as a kid watching the Helen Keller story. I remember I started crying. The pain of how this poor woman's story and how she had to fight to get to where she wanted to be really struck a note with me. So maybe I have this weird empathy
It's not weird.
trigger.
yeah, it's not
beautiful.
weird. It's being human, and it's amazing.
And back in the day, I want to say it was Sony. There was a class action lawsuit because of people were not getting paid overtime and they were fetching people's laundry. So that lawsuit changed the business in a lot of ways. And then throughout my career, I've seen change, more women, more people of color in my day to day, which is good. And then when the opportunity arose here, I'm like, okay, now I can actually get my hands in and dirty on making change. Especially after COVID, I was like, how beautiful would it be for, after 2 years of not being in the office, to come back to the office and see more people of color? And change is incremental.
Sure.
We've increased our partnerships with HBCUs. We put in our riders for our clients. We've done a green rider initiative. So when our clients are touring, they don't use as much crap. And other agencies are doing it too. And it's a new space. So I've been doing this now for 3.5 years. I don't want someone in a suit telling me how to be diverse when I've been doing it.
Right.
Yes.
You've been living it
I've been living it
and feeling it.
I think the way we're doing it is the right.
Well, I just feel like you are such a voice for the voiceless, and I feel like it's like you are a cheerleader for everyone else, and I just want to ask you, are you that same cheerleader for yourself?
It's funny, I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday, and she sort of got offered another job within the company. She's like, I thought about applying, but I didn't think I was good enough. And in this space, it's imposter syndrome is what it's called. And I recognize myself in my conversation with her. I often don't think I'm good enough. And I actually looked it up because it had been a while. And it's like, it's like people who suffer from imposter syndrome work harder to prove themselves because they don't think they're good enough. And I definitely go through that. I should probably be, and we all
We've
do.
all had to learn that,
Yes.
In my review last year, I said to the person, I was like, it's funny, I worked at these crazy big agencies and I speak for the voiceless, yet I don't advocate ever for myself.
Never.
And I thought it was pretty bold of me to actually tell that to my boss in my review. Because, when you talk about money or whatever,
Yeah.
I said, I never advocate for myself. So I'm trusting in you to be that for me because I don't do it for myself. Meanwhile, if Brad Pitt asked me to negotiate his next deal, I could probably do it. because it's, the big bag movie studio doesn't scare me.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to my own sitch, like that's scary for me. So
Yeah.
I've definitely gone through it. And as tough as I am, I got here through a lot of mistakes and a lot of learning and sort of being knocked down.
That's how you learn, though.
And that's how you learn. And, I'm very thankful for the support system that I've had throughout the years because, like, I would never have gotten to this place without that village. And it's a village of women, it's a village of gay people, it's a village of straight allies who were there for me too, who said, no, fuck that, you're part of this conversation, or you're going on this event. And my boss, like, he would negotiate the deal, but I would sort of coordinate all the parts. And he's like, no, you're going too.
I like your boss.
I was very lucky that my boss put my gay self, my 22-year-old gay self, like, hand-holding these clients.
Your boss saw your value and your potential when you didn't, which is a total blessing.
Yes.
Do you still keep in contact with that boss now?
Yes.
That's amazing.
A celebrity screamed at me over, show tickets. And she was like, where the F are my tickets? And she screamed at me. And I told my boss, and I was like, so-and-so, he called her up, yelled at her, made her get on the phone and apologize to me.
There you go.
Ooh, there we go.
Good.
And so and a lot of assistants or supportive people did not have that level of help with their bosses.
Right.
No.
That's good.
Especially back in that time. So where do
yeah.
you see this division of the company and everything? Like, how far do you want to take this?
The D&I space is super in my wheelhouse now because I've been doing it for the past several years. And there's always more. There's so many cultural moments that we don't celebrate here.
Right.
And
agreed.
Which we could. And so in the role that I have, I've been trying to bring out more of them. I think Islam is a religion that is very misunderstood in the US. And I've been a big advocate for trying to bring about Islamic cultural moments to the company. It's a fire hose. We have so much learning to do that it's impossible to sort of do, in 1 year.
Right.
So
of course,
it's an ongoing, as I've learned, it's so ongoing.
Is there like a manifesto thing that you're keeping and logging as you learn or whatever that eventually you would be able to share with companies or with groups that are starting or schools or universities or sororities, fraternities, something like that?
Absolutely. I think, I mentioned how I'm glad we didn't hire like some SVP of this. But I could be that next generation SVP because I started it myself.
Right.
I didn't go to school to learn this. I learned it from living it.
Of course.
And
which
I
is
think
the best.
That's the best. And that's especially in something like this, because I think the change is so organic. Because to impact real change in this space, I can't just sit someone down and tell them. Because how we react to, gay people, trans people, it's hard for a lot of folks.
Yeah.
We have to hear those stories from them, right? So it's important that you bring them in. You're right. You can't tell me to have empathy for somebody, but if I hear their story, then it's different, right?
Yes.
Firsthand.
So do clients know now when they get signed with your agency that, let's just say, like, racism or whatever will not be tolerated to anyone who works in the agency? Do they know that that's a big part of what your agency's about?
Absolutely.
That's incredible.
The clients know, and we, as part of the media part of our business, we have brand clients. So if we're out for a pitch for, say, Ford, Ford, as many brands do, will say, hey, what is my team going to look like from your company? I don't want it to be all boring white people. So companies, brands want more diversity. So it's sort of, and because we're trying to meet that moment to get business, obviously, we, we've become a more diverse company. We have literature, we have guides that we could share with our brands, like our inclusive, our glossary of inclusive terms is a big hit.
So, for someone, I just want to ask, and this is like a subtle change or profound impact in the sense of if I'm in a company and I don't have a lot of power, but I would like more, inclusiveness. Do I bring that up with a boss or an HR person, or what could I do subtly to try to introduce or not make my company, but ask my company, or get the vibe going around?
Every job I've started, I immediately figure out who is an ally here. Who do I trust? For inclusivity, I think HR is a good place. Or find someone who looks like you and sort of do a huddle about it and say, hey, I don't know if you might have felt like this, but I sort of think, what do you think? And maybe together we could, because there's
that's amazing.
Because not all companies have an HR, right? Smaller
say that
companies,
again?
not all companies have HR. I mean, there's a lot of small companies in entertainment. So that's a great suggestion.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's a really great suggestion.
And is there, to Dina's point, is there anything or will there be anything that your company, you release, whatever, that would be like guideposts for them to follow or to be able to hand to their boss or the owners of their company, that maybe they could say, hey, look what, this agency's doing and other agencies are doing, and we think this is really great and here's why, but sort of a roadmap to follow to put things in place?
Well, that's a good question. We haven't been asked for it, so we don't like.
But if somebody asked you for one, you could probably put one together.
I could probably put one together, yes.
If I'm interviewing at a company, is that the best thing for me to do would be like, do you guys have inclusivity here, or like, is there questions to ask about that?
Yes, absolutely. And people are asking them.
So, what are the right
luckily,
questions to ask?
a big thing is to say, what does your company look like? I'm a queer male. Is there anyone that's like me in your company? Or
great, that's a great way to put it. Is there anyone like me that is in your company? That's great.
Yes.
No, great, you're gonna be the first one.
In which case, there's that old line from, I forget the movie, of course. I'm older and I got more insurance.
Tawanda, fried tomatoes.
Say I'm biracial, so I'm sensitive to many different aspects of culture. Do you have anyone that is like me? Because I'm very tight with my current company's HR. People ask these questions, and they should.
Oh, great.
What does your leadership team look like? 10 years ago, people weren't asking that.
That's right.
Things are changing so much now, which is good. Are there any women? I mean, think about it. We just put a Black woman on the Supreme Court. It's been 200 years. You know what I mean? So
46 or something.
Yeah.
That's insanity.
Crazy. I'm Muslim, and for Ramadan, I'm going to need, is that okay? Do you have a best practices in place for someone who's Muslim?
Right. Let's hope that people are brave enough to ask those questions in the beginning, because like to your point earlier, like you would have done anything to get this job, right? So a lot of us kept silent. But I think what we've learned in hindsight is that it is so important to find these things out from the beginning, right? Know what you're walking into, let them know that you're, sort of keeping an eye on what they're doing in a sense by asking questions like that.
Absolutely. I know COVID has had a profound impact on the job market, and it's now a job seekers market. So I think people are bolder in these questions because they know that employers are desperate. Because you're right. Back in the day, I was just desperate to get.
Oh, me too. I didn't ask any of those questions. It was like,
yeah,
sure, thank you, sir. May I have another?
Right. And you don't know what you didn't know. Right. Okay. There's a lot of layers to this hell. And there were many teachable moments. And, and some of it is bad because there's no accountability anywhere, but would cry on my shoulder
Right.
twice a month.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Wow.
a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even then, I was sort of a campus leader.
Mm-hmm.
So people came to me with all sorts of problems and to vent or to cry. So I guess even back then, people saw this in me. I held a lot of hands. You can't have people hysterical crying at work. You can't,
No.
Hopefully
Yeah.
not. And,
you know.
And it
before
makes you so well suited to speak up. But if I was you, I would get used to educating people about inclusivity, because I feel like you're going to be asked a lot from other companies and other people to come and speak to people. And I feel like it's going to be a big thing for you, because you are going to be a voice for the voiceless, or people who don't know how to speak up for themselves, or were told to always keep their mouth shut and, just do your job, put your head down. I know so many people who just fly below the radar because they want to keep their job. They've got people to feed, and those New York Bells of yours literally have done you a great service. But I really feel intuitively, especially after this conversation, you should start getting prepared on going in and speaking for people, and teaching companies, not just agencies, on how to implement inclusivity, because I think that is your wheelhouse, and I think that is a big part of what your future is going to hold for you, because it's very powerful, and you're doing really great work for all of us.
Well, thank you for that. And yes,
You're welcome.
I, it's funny. I changed so much, and we talk about this at work. I like now when I walk into a supermarket, for example, like I immediately look at the staff, or when I watch
Oh
a TV
yeah.
show,
Mm-hmm.
I look at the casting.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had a lot of friendly debates with, on should straight people play gay? Should gay play straight? Like, it's so funny how this issue of diversity is something that touches every aspect of
Mm-hmm.
our daily lives. Like, I bought a new car, and it took me a year and a half. I watch a lot of content, but I watched the movie Fire Island. It's an all Asian Pacific Islander queer movie. Like, screw it. I'm a Nielsen family. I'm watching it because I want those stories to continue to be told. When I'm, buying a car, for example, like I don't want the white guy anymore. I'm done. Like, I want the younger kid who is probably not white. Like, I want to give him my business. And if he sucks, I'll get someone else. To give someone a chance is now what I'm looking to do. We cut off the top of the names on resumes, so when we send it to the
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
so because there's bias.
Yes.
And California is one of several states now that have legalized the Crown Act.
What is
so
that?
you can't be penalized or fired or whatever for your hair.
Your hair.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's a big thing, because I had a friend who was working with me when I was in a restaurant, and she used to have braids, and
Yes.
the owners actually made her wear a wig to work.
What?
And they would make her put a wig on and cover her braids.
Yep.
That's
Interesting.
fucked up. Yeah.
So absolutely. And a lot of in entertainment, it's illegal anyway, but in entertainment, a lot of times they ask you to send a headshot. Like, not cool. With Florida and all the Don't Say Gay bills and all this bullshit, partnered with Human Rights Watch. And I found this kid, he's 16, in Florida, this gay kid in Florida, who's been leading protests against the governor there. And he's been threatened, bullied, thrown out of school. Like, so I had him on, I did a podcast with him. And so the kids these days, they get it. And I was like crying. Off camera.
Yeah.
So powerful to see.
But this kid, I'm like, what parents you have? Like,
Right.
they had to install security on their house, like, because it's crazy. But he's like, I'm just not putting up with this shit. Like, he was so matter of fact about it. The kids get it. So they will be asking, what protections do you have in place? You know, do you have a gender neutral bathroom? We have to be prepared to answer these questions.
In Italy, we have gender neutral bathrooms, and most bathroom I go to are gender neutral bathrooms. And that was freaky to me in the beginning. I'm like, what do you mean a man goes in here too? No, stay calm. And most bathrooms here are gender neutral, which is, you know, I love it.
Which is funny because, you know, what I'm learning very quickly, you know, America is uptight.
Very.
You know, and it's funny because this country was founded on freedom of religion and all types, and how we've sort of strayed so backward. Remember the Disabilities Act?
Yeah.
Like, had to force people to put ramps. You know, this is how diversity is actually not embedded in our culture. You would think that if you're designing a building for a retail store, you would make it easy for someone with a wheelchair to get in. It shows the deficit in which we're operating in this space.
Yeah.
And finally, we're waking up.
And we're waking up, and it, you know, takes, you know, people like my company to say, hey, build this from the ground up and show us. So I'm very proud of the work that we've done.
Yeah.
And thank you for the work that you are doing, because it affects all of us. It's a vibrational, you know, thing. And so I'm so grateful for it.
Me too.
Well,
and I
thank
was just going to say also to circle back to Dina's subtle change, profound impact. Like, it's sort of, I was thinking as you were talking about the ways that we've gotten to this point here, and it all was because somebody spoke up. Like with the Me Too, it started with one person, like Salma Hayek or somebody back in the day, speaking up and getting some momentum going. And then you were speaking about the lawsuit that came about that, you know, now you don't have to go get people's laundry just because you work for them. That whole thing, these little things that are very subtle things that people can do to put in place, right? And then just use your voice, just speak up. When you're in that interview, speak up, ask these important questions, because look where we are now. Like, there are big changes happening because so many people have raised their hands and said, you know, me too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's really true. And I know how hard it can be to speak up.
Yeah.
Because, you know, and that's why I feel more empowered to do it, because, like, you know, if I lost my job tomorrow, at the end of the day, I'll be fine. I could speak up. You're and if they get rid of me, I'm older and I got more insurance.
That's right.
But I think that, you know, for others, they don't have that ability. And so I do take that to heart when talking with my HR people. I might be the only one, you know, saying it, but it's not in a vacuum. It's because other people feel it too. So you have to sort of advocate.
Yeah. Thank you for taking that on.
Totally, because at the end of the day, the message I would love for people to hear is we got to this place because so many of us didn't speak up.
That's right.
Right? Yes. And so, like, I didn't speak up for all of the bosses that were making advances on me and putting me in situations, and I waited for someone else to speak up or whatever it was, or I minimized it. So again, thank you so much for speaking up for so many who haven't, you know, been able to.
Yes.
And thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all for having
all of it. Yeah. I appreciate it so much. And again, for all the work you do. Amazing.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad that you wanted to have this conversation, because I think that, you know, we talk about diversity in so many terms, but I don't think people are on the ground floor in many ways on it yet.
Right.
So to have this conversation to sort of highlight the proof points, where the rubber meets the road, so to speak, makes it real.
I know that you've done interviews for like Variety. You've been on panels. So thank you for doing our little podcast. It's very sweet of you.
Of course. Thank you all.
So nice to meet you.